Hey, welcome back to another episode of Tech Talk. I am your host, Jeff Hootselle with AuditMax. Hey, you guys know Tech Talk is a conversation show. We talk to IT leaders from across the country that just have great backgrounds and great experience in a number of different areas. Always fantastic guests that join us. Today's show, we're really happy to have Micah Czigan. Mike is from Georgetown University. He's the Chief Information Security Officer. So, Micah, hey, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jeff. Good morning. How's it going?
It's going great. Well, how are things up in the DC area? You guys starting to warm up a little bit from the cold snap the last couple of weeks?
We are. There is still a little bit of a pile of snow on my yard, but it was 75 degrees yesterday, so we're glad to have a little bit of spring.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Micah, I know you're obviously in the role as a CISO with Georgetown, and you've got a great track record. I know you worked for the Department of Energy for a while. You worked at Symantec, so really experienced in this space. The folks that view the show are always really curious to talk to leaders like yourself. We talk about the area of cybersecurity in particular. It's such a rapidly evolving world that the threat surface is getting larger and larger as people go and work remote. They're more mobile. There's more bad actors out there in the marketplace. There's new technology everywhere. So it's becoming seemingly a more and more complex environment for folks trying to lead organizations. I'm curious, based on your experience, what your approach has been to that, and kind of the principles you follow as far as when you're laying out cybersecurity strategies for the organization.
Sure. So when I got into IT, there really wasn't much of a cybersecurity. It was information assurance, and as that discipline grew, it became the office of no. And everybody was like, well, we're just never getting anything done because security just doesn't want to do it. And when I got into a leadership role in cyber, I wanted to make sure that I was able to change that around, right? How do we become the office of let's get to yes? And a big part of that is involving, I don't call them stakeholders, your customers. And making sure that they're, what are we really trying to answer? What are we really trying to get to? And helping them to get to the right solution, whatever that is. I mean, from a technology perspective, we can do just about anything, right? But we really need to understand the business of our customers and understand how they're able, what's really going to enable them to get their mission done. And so that's a big part, I think, of cybersecurity and how I try to lead the organization.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I've been a part of organizations before where it is the group handling security. It's like this giant brick wall in front of doing your business, right? So everyone in the organization spends their time figuring out, how do I get around this or tunnel under it, or get around what security is trying to make me do and stop me from doing my job. Your approach of that mindset of enabling versus constricting, I think, is big. Yeah, it's easy to say, but in practice, what are some ways you guys have actually put that into place? Are there any specific examples that you can kind of lay out or approaches you have that really make that work?
Well, sure. So one is to making sure that we're very transparent about what we're doing, about what our policies are, and not just what they are, but why we've come to those conclusions and policies. And then being very public to the organization about the changes that we're making, getting them involved, whether it's mass password resets and getting them involved in the process of that, or new firewalls, and making sure we understand not just what their requirements are, but what's the business need, right? What we have multiple colleges, the law center, right? So we need to understand how the law center operates and what is the business need that they have, so that we can ensure that collectively together we're implementing the right solution. And so that's a big part of how we do. I also tell the staff, like, your answer should never be no to begin with. Like there are very few scenarios in which I want to hear no off the bat. There are probably a few, but not many. And let's start with, okay, what's your real need? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And how do we get to yes? How do we get to solve that problem?
Yeah, it's kind of the Simon Sinek, like, start with why, right? Why are you trying to do this? What are you trying to accomplish? And then kind of build from there. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So what's this been like? So obviously that's challenging enough as it is when everybody's in a physical location or on campus or in the office. The past year we've seen everything disperse, right? So everybody's working from home, everybody's remote. When you were already seeing the mobile computing things come in and folks on cell phones and tablets and things like that. But now that we're talking about, the landscape is so much larger because everyone's remote. and coming back in to access your resources. What kind of new things has that thrown at you guys, and how have you adapted with that being just kind of a new facet of how we work and how we operate?
Right. So we certainly have, a much broader, attack vector now that everybody's network is in their home or at the Starbucks or wherever they're at, right? And so, really two courses of actions. Like one, we could try to lock everything down and be so restrictive that almost nothing operates. Or we can just assume like this is going to be it, right? And so maybe I don't need to be so restrictive if we're making everything available through web-based interfaces, right? And maybe I don't need to give every student a credential because that can be expensive and a little difficult. Maybe your Google, address and password is okay for the student's needs, and because they don't need access to sensitive data. But the CFO, that we really need to make sure that he has a managed station, that it's well secure, and that we give him a credential and we make sure that he's well protected. But if he's just coming in to grab a coffee and he's got his cell phone, his personal cell phone, that's fine. He doesn't need to log in. And so we're really looking at how do we get the right mix of making sure we protect the truly sensitive resources and make the things that aren't sensitive really easy to access.
Yeah. So is it really just a matter of kind of identifying that critical data that you need to protect and kind of putting your focus on that, and then not having that carry over as a global policy around everything? Kind of what I hear you say.
Yeah, right? Absolutely, right? I mean, if you're going to build that big fence over every single acreage, that's really expensive and probably not necessary. So we identify what are the critical data sets, right? What's really truly sensitive that we really need to protect, and let's protect that really well. Let's concentrate and spend our money and resources there, and not so much on all the other stuff.
Yeah. Mike, I'm curious. I mean, as you talk to your peers and kind of you look out over the industry and kind of how business is being conducted today, especially with the cybersecurity focus on it, what are you seeing as kind of the next trends and kind of what's coming next really for folks in your role, of things they should be aware of, things they should be looking out for, whether it's great new technologies on the front or it's just a different approach and things like that. Where's kind of your head out looking out over the next year to 2-3 years?
So a lot of what I'm hearing is the same thing that I'm seeing is how do we not just get to the next buzzword, whether it's zero trust, whatever that actually is, but what's really going to get us to the next 10, 15, 20 years without having to spend another 15, 20 million dollars. That's what everybody's thinking, because especially now as we're having to make a lot of changes, let's spend the money on something that's going to get us much further and in an environment that's really going to be secure for what we need and not all the other stuff. And, what have we missed? So, ICS, SCADA, IoT has certainly been kind of in the background for a couple of years. And now there's definitely a lot more concentration as we see many more attacks on our, these systems that we really haven't concentrated, whether our voting systems or electrical, our power, wind and water systems, right? They're very vulnerable, and they're actually a part of our environment. So many universities and even companies have their own power generation systems. And they have not traditionally been really looped into the IT or security arena. And now many CISOs and CIOs are now saying, you know what, they really are part of our environment. We really need to figure this out. So, and then how do I integrate them into our environment so that they're going to be secure for the next 20 years?
Yeah. I think people saw that, especially with what happened in Texas, over the past week or so, with kind of the failures of some of the power grid there, and what could have happened. It came very close to happening if you read some of the reports. I think just that wake up call to everyone of, hey, this is older infrastructure, or has not been addressed, or is not where it needs to be. Is a big concern for sure.
That's huge, and that wasn't even a cyber attack, right? I mean, that's a natural thing, right? And yeah. And so, like, what if some cyber actor says, "Oh, I'm going to take advantage of this"? Right? That's like the super triple whammy. And how are CIOs and CISOs addressing that? And they really are. They're really starting to dig down and be a part of the business, not just, some little, office over here that spends a whole lot of money and tells everybody no, but really being a part of the business itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that approach, Mike. I mean, it's just, I can hear from you talking, you're kind of repeating that same theme over and over again, where you're not falling in love with a given technology or a different, lockdown methodology or approach. It's not about having 1,000 different tools. It's about understanding your business, understanding what you're trying to accomplish, what data is really important that we need to protect, and kind of approaching it from that standpoint. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely very big consensus. Many CIOs, especially in universities, are really trying to divorce themselves from, oh, we're a Cisco shop, right? And nothing wrong with Cisco; they're great. Or we're, this kind of shop. We're all Windows or Linux or whatever it is, right? Let's find the right solution, but yet let's make sure we identify the problem. What are we really trying to solve? And that's nothing new. I mean, project management has been around for decades. Let's just use those tools that we know work and actually do them instead of, just, oh, here's a solution. Let's try to find a problem for it.
Yeah. So, Mike, I'm curious, within Georgetown, are you guys seeing more and more students that are really, is there a large increased demands in folks looking to get into this space? Is that something you see a big ramp up in it, or is it still where, hey, there's such a need for more and more professionals in that cybersecurity space, and we're just not there yet? What's your experience been like lately?
I think it's both, really. There is a huge lack of skilled talent, and not just skill. There's a lack of talent, period. And there's a huge influx of people who are saying, "Yes, I want to be in this sphere." And so educational, universities and private institutions are really trying to, build these programs and get people that aren't just certificates, right? Not just people who are trained to pass the test, but people who have real experience, and that includes things like getting them internships in companies and getting them that real world experience before they get out there trying to get a job. And so I definitely seen a huge influx, but man, the market is just so. There just aren't enough people, and it's probably going to take 10, 15 years before we're able to expand the number of people that are actually available.
Yeah. So Micah, take me on this. If I'm a young IT professional looking to kind of get started my career down that path, is there one piece of advice that you would give to those guys you think that maybe somebody gave you when you were younger, or something you just seen through your experience that you'd pass along?
Sure. So I definitely think that I'd say two pieces. Number one, understand the underlying tenets of IT, right? It's very easy to come in and just kind of start to pass the tests, but to understand, things that may not seem relevant, like what's the OSI level, OSI layer, right? And what's really in a packet, and really understand the technologies that that you're working with. The other is really get to understand the business side of your company or your organization. What's their mission? What it is that they do, so you understand how what you do affects the rest of the organization.
No, that's terrific. Micah, awesome advice, buddy. As always, it's always fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking some time out this morning for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Jeff. It was a great talk.
All right, appreciate it. Hey, thank you guys for joining us as well for another Tech Talk. Keep your eyes out for our next one coming up next week. And if you want to see more interviews like Micah's, head over to automax.com. You can see our whole library of over 150 interviews there. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.